So picking up where I just left off, I've got the L here with my darker green gradient from dark to light going back. And now I'm going to go into that green with my sort of limier green. Once again, to get that color transition, because we're going from red all the way down towards a yellow, yellow-orange type color. And you can do a color transition with any colors you pick within your word. I do find that it works best on a cursive word simply because you have more connected spaces. But that does not necessarily mean that you could not do it on a not cursive word. It just would look a little bit different. So once again, turn the page however you need so that you are using the tip along the edge, the tip of your pencil along the edge of your shape. Because craftsmanship definitely matters at this point. And you want to make sure that your work looks neat and that you have finished it to the best of your ability. Because now that we are in the second quarter, your craftsmanship is going to matter more and more as we go throughout. So then on this side, I'm going to start with my limier green, because this is the interior part is going to be quite dark. And then I'm just going to go in with the darker green. Turn my page so I can be using the tip of the pencil along that edge that is darkest. And then I'm going to move into this section here, starting again with my lighter green. But this time I'm going to do a lighter value of it, so you can barely see it on the camera probably. But the reason I'm starting out pretty light is because this section is going to have yellow in it. So I want to get the yellow on there before I make the green too dark. Yellow is one of the trickier colors to use when it comes to a value scale, simply because it's such a light color already that it is kind of hard to see that transition happen. So you do want to be careful if you are using yellow to make sure that you get that transition in there pretty smooth and that you add other colors like what we are doing now along the edge of that E. I'm going back in with some more of the green to sort of emphasize that value transition, but still allowing the yellow to be the main color there. So there you can see that the yellow is still the main color on this part of the E, but the green helps make the value transition a little bit more obvious. So now I'm going to start on this section starting with my yellow and get lighter and lighter as I move back. Go in with a little bit of green towards the top corner. Getting lighter and lighter as I move away from that corner by pressing down less. And then towards the bottom, I'm actually going to go ahead and use some orange in this corner. Not a whole bunch yet, just a smidge. And then fade that into the yellow. And then I'll add a little more yellow on there to brighten it up and to make it all sort of cohesive. And then this last bigger section, I'm going to start with my yellow, get lighter as I move back, and then flip my page so that I'm using the tip of the orange against that darker space and get lighter and lighter as I move back. So you'll notice that whenever you are working with yellow specifically, any darker color, you're not going to necessarily press down very hard. simply because it's going to be quite a bit darker than your yellow is naturally, without too much extra pressure. But then you will press down quite a bit harder with your yellow, like I was just doing there, to brighten that section up. And then this part I will start with my orange. And once again, it's going to be pretty dark in there. And then I'm going to go into the very little tip here with some red orange, just to darken that section a little bit. So then the apple portion would be possibly finished in terms of the depth. And you can see that the colors transition pretty smoothly as you go across, so that it kind of makes sense. Now on the crab part, what I want to do is just show you the option of using black and white. Because some people were asking, do we have to use color on the word or not? And the answer is that you do not have to. I do find that it works pretty well, but you can absolutely do the same thing with a black colored pencil, or even with your regular drawing pencils. So exactly the same thing. Build it up in layers. Start with your darkest value toward the front of that depth area, closest to the front of the letter. Turn the page however often you need to keep it nice and smooth in there. And then you can go into that lighter area with some white, as we've been doing with our colored versions, because that's just going to blend in with the black more and make more of a smooth gray. So you can absolutely do the exact same process using black and white by using colored pencil and or your regular drawing pencils. You could also do primarily black and white and then just add a little bit of color in the shadow areas and the corners and stuff. Like if I wanted to be working on this particular part of the sea and have it start out mostly black and white, but then use a little bit of blue or a little bit of red or purple or some sort of other dark color to darken up the corners and the edges, I definitely could. So once again, the exact color combination is up to you. The main point is that you want to practice your shading so that your value scales are nice and smooth, so that the depth is really enhanced there, so that it's darkest toward the front of the letter and then fades as it gets towards the back. Because remember when we were talking about perspective and space, when we were doing our elements of art, we learned that as things get further away from the viewer, they do appear lighter. So that's the same concept we're doing here. Starting out darkest, closest to the viewer, closest to the front of the letters, and then getting lighter and lighter as we move away. So remember, some layers will take, or some parts of your letter will take more layers, others will just take a couple. It's okay if it varies and changes from one to the next. The main thing is to be careful, take your time, and keep everything as neat and smooth as you can as you transition from dark to light. So right now I'm just kind of working on the black section, and then I will go back in and I will add the white the way I did on that first little bit. You can do it that way, or you can do one letter at a time and completely finish it before you move to the next. As with everything during this particular part of the project, you are the one who really gets to decide exactly how you complete it. So once again, because the R does have a corner, I'm going to also have a value scale going this way a little bit. Starting darkest in that corner area and then getting lighter as I move away. Building that corner up in layers and keeping the transitions nice and smooth once again. So the more you practice like this, the more you do each letter as accurately as you can, the easier it will become, to where some of your spaces, like I just did on the bottom of that A, will only take one layer, maybe two, simply because it is a small space and you understand the concept more as you use it more. But then you'll see that on bigger spaces, I still definitely need more than one layer to smooth it out and to make that transition as gradual as it needs to be. Notice too that I go in multiple directions a lot of times, and that is simply because, just like when we did our original value scales a long time ago, when you shade in sort of a crisscross pattern, then what you're doing is being able to fill in all of those little gaps in between your original pencil lines, so that you get a nice smooth transition in there, rather than something that has a bunch of lines in it. Once again, the inside of this top part of the A is going to be mostly dark, so I'm just going to kind of do it quite dark. And then the other part of the inside is going to be a little lighter as it moves back. Outside of the B first. Darkest once again towards the front, pressing down less and less as I move back. Turning the page so that I can use the tip in the corners and really enhance that value transition. Same thing on the bottom, darkest toward the front, darkest in the corner, and then fading lighter and lighter as I move back. And then on the insides, it's going to be mostly dark. I'm going to actually shade from the curved part down. So it goes from the curved part and gets lighter as I move down, simply because that's sort of the direction that the rest of the depth area is shaded. So when you have a section like that where the whole thing is kind of going to be a hole, just pay attention to where the lightest part is on all of the other letters and all the other parts. So the lightest part here is on the bottom left. So I'm going to make the lightest part on the inside of the B the bottom left as well, so that it matches the outer part of the B. Now I'm just going to go in with some white into those sort of lighter areas to help smooth out my transitions a little bit more. Because once again, it's okay if you don't have white, but using your colored pencil can help make sure that you get as light as you can moving back. Because remember, colored pencil will not erase completely, which is another reason why it's a good idea to use your drawing pencils for this type of shading if you're not necessarily comfortable with it yet. Using the drawing pencils is an excellent option at this point. So now that depth area on the word crab is also done. So then the next little bit that I'll be doing will be the insides of my letters. Because once again, we want to get the depth area of the letters done first, so that the fronts are literally on top.